Our chief guest, who is going to inaugurate the open forum today, is Gautam Ghosh. We'll be having Sri Kamal, our KCA chairman, Sri Chelavur Venu, Sri V.K. Joseph, Sri Nagaraj Manjule, Ruchir Joshi, Nandini Ramnath, and Sri Jayan Cherian on the stage. Please welcome. Before moving into the open forum proper, we have a release session of Drishyatalam, special issue of festival. Drishyatalam issue will be released by Sri Gautam Ghosh, handing it over to Sri Kamal. I welcome both of you, sir. Drishyatalam is released by Sri Gautam Ghosh, published by Federation of Film Societies of India, Kerala. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Today, the open forum will be inaugurated by Sri Gautam Ghosh, National Award-winning director from Bengal. He is also an acclaimed music director and cinematographer. The panel will be joined by Ruchir Joshi, well-known writer and filmmaker, and Nagaraj Manjule, the famous director of Fandry and Serath, will be also joining. Sri Jayan Cherian will also join them. I request Sri C.S. Venkateswaran to start the open forum. Thank you, sir.
Welcome to the first edition of Open Forum in the 24th International Film Festival of Kerala, organized by FFSI along with Academy. So a warm welcome to you all. Also, I welcome Gautam Ghosh and all the other dignitaries on the stage. Basically, Open Forum is a kind of open kind of space where filmmakers, critics, and other film society activists, programmers, directors interact with the audience on issues of contemporary importance. So we have, every day we have a particular issue which is being discussed here as an open space. So it's been a very lively forum for for all these 24 years, which has been organized by Federation of Film Societies. And we have been having all the major filmmakers, luminaries as part of this open forum. So we are very happy to to welcome you all to this 24th IFFK, the first open forum in that. This open forum will be inaugurated by Gautam Ghosh, so I invite Gautam Ghosh to speak a few words.
Thank you very much. Good evening, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a great pleasure for me to participate in this open forum, which has been continuing for many, many years, even before we started in Calcutta 25 years back or Kerala 24 years back. It was there during the IFFI, when IFFI was touring. However, it's a very interesting situation and position where we are at the moment. Well, in the film festival, we congregate, we watch film collectively, but because of technology, now each and every individual can organize a film festival because of technology. You, if a group of people, through digital, you can organize a film festival or kind of a showcasing some films. When the festival began, right, long back in the 30s in Venice. The idea was that European filmmakers would exchange ideas during the festival. And that was the beginning of film festival and all kinds of forum and discussion with the audience. I love Kerala. I love the filmmakers of Kerala, actors of Kerala, technicians of Kerala, and the audience of Kerala. And also, at this juncture, I like Kerala more because Kerala is 100% secular state. This is very important in today's context. Well, cinema was born with a strange dichotomy of change. Because, filmmakers never created cinema. Cinema was created by the scientists and technologists. And their creation was taken forward by the creators and the filmmakers. So it was the silent cinema. Then at one point of time, sound came. And when sound came, there was a total nose down of the beautiful silent cinema, which almost became an art. So it's a continuous process of change. And, we are also part of that change in our country, too. I think, when sound film came, it became theater almost. All of you know it became a theater. The entire language of cinema completely vanished from the scenario. But again, the creators did miracle. And here, I want to remind you a great Adir Baza. Great Adir Baza, he said, in defense of mixed cinema, that bring back montage of attraction with mise-en-scène of new sound cinema. And that had created a great movement in Europe of incredible cinema. So this is a very, very exciting dichotomy. And my age of filmmaker, we have seen a total evolution, black and white to color, optical sound to magnetic sound to television, video, digital, and so on. So it's very, very interesting how we look at the cinema. When you enter into the theater, you look there. When you look at your cell phone, a cinema is like this. So it's a very interesting perspective change. And also perception change. Perception of the filmmakers and perception of the audience. A certain image quality, like a painter, when a painter creates a space, he tries to understand what will be my format. Vertical, horizontal, or whatever. So in cinema also, we tried many kind of formats. But now, it's a unbelievable paradigm change because of digital medium. So how long the cinema will survive in the theater, we don't know. But the festivals will survive. Because, in the festivals, people will come to see for a collective viewing. So it's a very, very interesting transition period for cinematic art, because technology is something which gives new, and, it has, in last 15 years, it was a really paradigm change. So many things. So many, each and every day, new apparatus are coming up. So where we will end, we don't know. But one thing will remain, that is the time and space of cinema. The cinematic time will remain because, that is the most effective and common thing of cinematic art, the time factor. You can tell a story of 1,000 years in 2 hours. You can tell a story of 2 hours in 2 hours. You can tell a 10-minute story in 5 hours. So cinema can squeeze and expand time. Technology will change, but this will remain. That is my understanding. And another thing, we have to understand that technologists, scientists, they create new apparatus every day. Filmmakers, they make application through those apparatus. But in between, there is a market force which dictates what will remain and what will go. Market force pushed the silent cinema out of the scene. Market force pushed analog out of the scene. So the market force controls. So it will continue like this, and we have to live with this contradiction of ever changing, because cinema is not permanent. Only the cinematic time is permanent. And what cinema could do, cinema could record the collective memories of people for last 118 years or so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gautam Ghosh, for your inaugural speech, and also to bring in certain very key points which we are supposed to discuss. Because today's theme is actually the changing landscape of Indian cinema. So two or three things to take off from what Gautam Ghosh was saying. Like, there's a huge change in the last 20 years after the digital turn in cinema, where the apparatus of cinema, the technology of cinema has been so-called democratized. Everyone has become a filmmaker. Everybody can make a film. A lot of films you can see in festivals and all around are made by youngsters who are not from film schools or from the industry, but they have learned on themselves. By themselves, they have been making films. So one thing is the huge freedom, liberation that the digital turn has brought into cinema. So looking at changing landscape of Indian cinema, to come to that, I would just, there are a lot of other speakers to speak, so I will just flag certain points. One is this digital turn. Second is actually, if you look at the last few years, there is a kind of resurgence of the local and the regional. If you look at Indian cinema scene, there is a huge, there is a kind of a fluorescence of local cinemas, especially Northeast or Tamil cinemas, Malayalam for instance. A lot of young filmmakers have come and actually revolutionized the whole look and feel of cinema. They have brought in new narratives, they have brought in different kinds of treatments, they have, their influences are global, not just local. They are not just looking up to their surroundings, but looking out. They have been exposed to film trends, film, making from all over the world. So they're making a new kind of cinema. So one thing is the resurgence of the local and the regional. Along with that, one could also say new platforms, emergence of new platforms. It's not just theaters. You had television, then you had, other kinds of, now you're living in times of streaming times, where, major films are being picked up by, agencies like Netflix or Amazon Prime. It comes straight to through streaming to your household, to your personal computer or, mobile phone, rather than go into festivals, other festivals, theaters, television. All these, other forums, platforms are now being taken over or being, short-circuited by new media platforms. So that is another kind of challenge. Along with that, I think in the Indian context, one will also have to see, also in the third world context, it is a kind of retreat of the government and public funding of cinema. That is no longer happening. All over the world, the government agencies and public funding for alternate, serious cinema is actually shrinking. That has actually had a huge impact on Indian cinema as well. Like you earlier had, agencies like NFDC, then you had PSBT, then you have Doordarshan to telecast. A lot of public support, public funding, public platforms to support alternate cinema, serious cinema, art cinema, which is shrinking or is no longer existing. So another thing could be like, so the question is whether actually these broadening of platforms, new platforms, and the changing technology of cinema, has it actually liberated independent filmmakers to make new films? Has it given new platforms? Or is it actually, as Gautam Ghosh was indicating, like is it all going to march along the road, laid down by the market, global market, its tastes, its interests, its hegemonic kind of stranglehold over not only the film industry, all other platforms of film viewing, as well as even film festivals. Like it is actually, many of the film festivals are run by corporate agencies. So how is the changing landscape of Indian cinema, how is it going to address all these issues? These will be some of the issues which I think these filmmakers will be pondering upon. So I will start with Kamal for his few. So we'll start with Nandini.
I'm not talking about this topic because I have no time. I have another function. I have to attend there. Anyway, first of all, I thank Mr. Gautam Ghosh to present here. And you everybody know, especially youngsters, Gautam Ghosh is a legendary filmmaker in Indian cinema. We are very proud of his presence even in the open forum. About the topic, I have to talk a lot about, but the time is very short. So please allow me to go some other function. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nandini. I have 2 or 3 points to make, which perhaps we could debate later. One is that it does appear that many more filmmakers can just pick up a phone and make a film. But from my own experience of covering Indian independent cinema, especially by younger filmmakers over the last 5-6 years, distribution remains a huge challenge. You may make a film, but you have the same problems that your predecessors had. Nobody wants to pick it up for distribution. Nobody wants to program it necessarily everywhere. Platforms like Netflix and Amazon and now Mobi India has come in. They're like big mixer grinders. Everything goes into it and you don't know what's coming out of it. Because a lot of these people don't share viewership data, it's very hard to tell who's actually watching what. I think for filmmakers, they feel quite insecure. They have the pride of knowing that their films are showing by Netflix in 168 countries or whatever, but they don't know who's watching what. So I think there's a fake kind of democratic feel over here. I just think the funders have changed, so a lot of them are foreign funds, they're foreign agencies. European funds are funding films and so on. But I'm not really sure the things have really opened up. If anything, things have become a little more confused. In the old days, it was a little easier. If you made a film with NFDC, what was so-called parallel cinema, it would or would not get a limited release. It would get a national award or two. It would get shown on Doordarshan. It would land up on a DVD. There was a clear path. I think now there are too many options, and consequently, it's a little confusing. It's a confusing time, I think, for filmmakers. Yeah. The other question I had also is, the other thing with what streaming allows you to do is it allows you to pause a film, to forward it, to rewind it. So in terms of exploring time and the way the filmmaker wants to pace his or her narrative, I think streaming is throwing up another challenge altogether of how you watch a film. I can stop watching Scorsese's Irishman at 1 hour, go take a walk, buy my vegetables, come back and continue it. That's not the way he meant me to watch the film. So for independent filmmakers who are very conscious of their aesthetic choices, to know that your film will land up on Netflix and will be paused while I shut off the cooker or whatever. I don't know if that's really the best platform for them. It may be the only available platform, but I think all of them do want a theatrical release like everybody else. And I think that challenge really remains. If that's the only avenue available for them, that's not fair, I think, to that kind of cinema.
I would like to add something. You know, always I wonder why we go to movie theaters. Just to get entertained, or to know something, or to share with friends some time inside the movie theater. If we think deeply, we go to the movie theater to experience time. Because, you know, there is nothing called present. I'm talking, but it is becoming past. So present is a fraction between past and the future. So in the movie theaters, what we watch is all about past. A film was conceived, scripted, shot, edited. So it's like that, you know, it's an experience of time. But as you have explained rightly, after seeing half an hour, an hour of Irishman, you go out. Or many viewers, they see 5 minutes, one film, then shift to another film. So this time concept is missing here. The experience of time, because what is happening in the theater may be happening, it happened in the past, but you come across that as if, you know, or get the feeling as if it is happening in front of you. So this time factor is missing in digital, but can't be helped because the new technology is here. So how you know, at one point of time we say it has become democratic. Again, we have doubts how democratic it is. So I think you're right, you know, we are in a very confusion state of affairs.
Thank you, Nandini. I think we are talking about cinematic time, and also one thing like what you're referring to, like it has become film watching experience has become like reading a book where you can stop, rewind, fast forward, whatever. But there is also another thing to cinema which I think is very fundamental to watching cinematic experience, which is publicness of cinema, where people come together, gather in a particular space and watch it on a big screen, which is an experience which has not been actually, you know, taken over by any other medium. You may have immersive experience and a lot of personalized, domesticated kind of, you know, entertainment, but I think still cinema survives because of this publicness and also its hybridity, where it is able to imbibe, adapt all kinds of things. So we'll move to Rijit Joshi. So we are discussing about to come back from time to space. Like we are talking about changing landscape of Indian cinema during the last few many years. Like a lot of things have changed. A new generation has come up. There is people working on the digital media. A lot of young filmmakers coming up, and also the kind of resurgence of the local and the regional in Indian cinema today. And you know, what are the kinds of challenges you see, and what is the nature of the changing landscape according to you?
You know, very nice to see Gautanda here and all of you. Great honor to be here. Thank you. Can I take a slightly contrary view and be optimistic? Because I come from a background of documentary, non-fiction, essay filmmaking, right? So I was just talking at my screening about what 16 millimeter meant at one point, where, you know, you were making films in 16. After you, our generation was also trying to shoot in 16, and all the problems, the technological stuff going wrong. 35 was always the first child of the laboratories, of the cinemas, of the critics, everyone. And fiction film was always the first child. And then documentary in 16 came like a stepchild. And then soon, around 93, 94, 16 millimeter began to disintegrate all over the country, and these small video cameras came in. And I, for one, along with a few other people, were making essay films or trying to make essay films in 16 millimeter at that point. And then shortly after, when you could actually have a cassette which went for half an hour or 1 hour, you could take long shots, you could let an interviewee talk a lot without cutting them or editing on the spot what they were saying. But at the same time, the moment the VHS recorder and cassette came in the early 80s into India, we lost that magical period that we had, say from, for us it would be from the 1930s to the 1980, to about 50 years maybe, where going to see the cinema was a communal experience. There was a sense of the sacred, of shared time as you looked, as you were put back in the past, in whether it was a commercial Hindi cinema or a Bengali cinema, whether it was Uttam Kumar or Satyajit Ray or Hrithik Ghatak, you know, the whole gamut was only available to you in the cinema hall. TV came later. I mean, I was already 12 or 13, 14 when the time television came into my life. You would have been a bit older. So for us, television wasn't a concept. And then comes the VHS tapes, then comes DVD and Blu-ray. The moment that comes, and those of us who were cinephiles were looking avidly to see Scorsese or Coppola or Vajda or whoever, or all the filmmakers we admired on VHS. But that was always possible, that you put something on pause and go and get yourself another drink or switch off the gas or go to the bathroom, and you continued. And then other people who were not so serious about cinema, if you showed them your film, like your family, and you had made what you thought was, you know, really tried to make this great work of art, not great, but serious work of art, and they would say, oh, they'd start talking in the middle of the film and talking to each other, take a phone call, something, and you would be like, where is the sacredness of my film? Gone. But that has been disintegrating in some ways from the 1980s onwards, I would say. So those of us who were lucky to have that moment in the cinema when great films were being made and we could only see them in the cinema, that is past. On the other hand, the freedom that you get now with new technology, whether it's a phone, whether it's a small camera like that on which you can make the film, you can edit at home, find different venues. Of course, it's confusing and you cannot be rosy-eyed about it that everything is fantastic or great. But I think for subversion and for being able to cut through this dark time that we're living in, I'm actually quite glad that we don't have the rigidity that we had in the 70s and 80s where the censor board certificate could hold you up or Doordarshan could hold you up. You know, you can go around, you can make a film which is completely crazy and you don't have to pass it through any of the authorities. It is a freedom, and freedom is always scary. So there are traps like Netflix. Someone explained the maths of Netflix to me that they need to have certain hits all the time. So they will fund a film, and a French filmmaker friend, they funded her film, but they didn't even check the shoot. They just kept checking, oh, are you doing okay? Are you doing okay? And then at the end, they watched one rough cut and okayed the film. They didn't care. They needed her algorithm, her kind of film to go out. So Netflix gives you that opportunity. Scorsese, you mentioned, he and De Niro had no choice as producers but to go to Netflix. So otherwise this film would not have been made. Now, of course, you want to see Scorsese on a big screen in a proper way, but this is the new reality, and I think we have to try and see what advantages, what freedoms we can claw out of it. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I will request Jayan Cherian to join the debate.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed the conversation most of the part. But actually the content distribution is radically changed recently. And the corporations like Amazon and Netflix step in. And the short form of film itself kind of going obsolete, and the long forms and engaging people in the living rooms, in their homes. Content is kind of more consumer friendly and designed in a fashion. And these all works are designed to create a kind of sensibility within your home. And particularly evoke some kind of primordial instincts of the humans who is consuming, and intrinsically film and movie are voyeuristic. And it is designed that way. At the same time, the people, the political filmmakers who choosing their film as their primary medium of expression and creating a content which is connected to the social movement and at the same time unsettling the present status quo of each state is problematic. Even Amazon or Netflix or Google themselves doing the censorship. Even we have this peculiar situation, so-called 1953 Cinematograph Act, and it's kind of very draconian. And of course, the dissent will be muted. And personally, I have been fighting last 2.5 years for a film just to get censored. And finally, going through various hierarchies of censorship and the courts and writs and so-called interim orders, still the film is not reached people. Even Amazon Prime carries is not in India. It's outside. And also, even you put something in the YouTube, some kind of mass reporting will block that. And every content is censored when you are talking about political dissent and political filmmaking in India. How we deal with the changing landscape of content creation and distribution, there is one positive thing, there's a global market is open. And the Indian filmmakers, especially independent voices from India, could be reach out other countries. But primarily, a content is generated in a particular society, which addressing a particular situation in that community, need to be shown there. Unfortunately, there is no hope in the horizon. And until the filmmakers stand together and scrap this draconian 1953 Cinematograph Act, which is 52 or 53, and which is, of course, a colonial polymorph of 1921, 1918, this British Cinematograph Act. And surprisingly, Indian filmmakers are mum about that. Of course, there is sounds, there is several committees. Latest Sam Benegal committee report is so funny. It was so funny. And
They worked for 1.5 years.
Yes.
Then the file was dumped.
Of course, this committee is being formed, but the reports being submitted and never real effective action being taken. But still, this is the nature of power. Whoever get in power, if anything unsettling for the people who is in power, which never going to reach anywhere, or the theatrical distribution in particularly Kerala or India, you can see the corporations are controlling. Of course, the chronic capitalistic situation right now, the corporations are always work hand in hand with the people in power. So practically, it is very difficult to show. Right now, the only way we can show our films in the activist circle, university classrooms, and it's also problematic. Some free spaces are disappearing. If in IFFK itself, some films selected here is INB ministries intervene and blocking. Personally, I have experienced that, and couple of festivals screenings being cancelled. So this problem, we filmmakers together, artists and filmmakers and poets and painters of the country, supposed to stand up and do something against this, organize and bring out their voices. Somehow we have to figure it out. It's never going to be given from up in the hierarchy. Any rights we are exercising right now, it is coming from the grassroots activism and the movement from the grassroots level. It's never, ever the people in power, whoever there, whatever color their flag is, doesn't matter. They never give up. So this is a continuum. This is a struggle. Democracy always work in the as actually the result of a vigilant civil society. And the struggle must continue.
Thank you, Jayant. Before I, open up the discussion to the public, I would like to have a quick response from all the panelists about how Indian cinema has responded to this, the whole, change in the technology, like to digital, and also the kind of, new, the political scenario that is emerging, which is, snubbing all kind of dissent that is already there. Then you have this kind of new streaming networks and all that, short-circuiting the whole, the world of cinema, of distributing cinema through film festivals as well as through theaters. So the whole, as Nandini was saying, the whole, the way in which your experience cinema has changed. So what I'm asking is like just a response about how has Indian cinemas responded to this change, technological, political, as well as, this, mediamatic.
Well, there are two aspects. One is business, marketing, and another aspect is the creative aspect. Well, now you have freedom. A small group can make an experimental film, as Ruchi says. When we were making documentaries in 35 millimeter or 16 millimeter, we had a lot of limitation. Now, you can roll your camera. You can get the candid moments. Wait for that. So I think, on a creative side, small groups can create wonderful works, experiment on new form, new technology. At the same time, we have to look for some revenue model. Because, I remember, a long back, almost 18 years back, I chaired a jury in Capalvio in Italy. Wonderful film festival of short fiction film, made mostly in those days in celluloid, but all the films were sold in television, European television, Arte, German television, and many other television. But unfortunately, in India, not a single television which encourages new filmmakers, new experiments. So these are the problems. These we have to handle it. And the creative side is, it depends on the creator. I give one example. Sorry, am I taking? I'm giving. I want to give a very, very glaring example. That was in 2004, when HD was introduced, good quality HD cassette of 90 minutes and 120 minutes. Alexander Shokurov made a film called Russian Ark. Just imagine, how creatively he used the new technology. The film is a 98 minutes, one-shot film, not a single cut. So it's so interesting, because it was possible because of the HD cassette. Interesting, it was shot in St. Petersburg, in the famous Hermitage Museum. A 17th century diplomat enters the museum, modern museum, and then in the next room he enters into 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, and 21st century, all together in one shot. So it's linear in a way. The motion is linear, but the whole concept is cyclic. So that was possible because of HD cassettes. So in India, we have immense possibility. I'm very hopeful and optimist that, even with the small apparatus, people are making wonderful things, young generation filmmakers. My son is making a film now. In Calcutta, there is a place called Esplanade. In the evening, hundreds and thousands of people, hawkers, and you find, it's a mess. And he took a shot, a single shot, no cut, with dialogues between three characters, and moving on. They were quarreling, they're talking, they're arguing, all the characters, but nobody's looking at the camera. which was impossible in our days. Nobody, because people are so used to DSLR camera, a small camera. So we have to think both creatively and how we can market it. That's the most important thing.
I'll just briefly, I'll speak briefly about the Indian independent filmmakers. I think the ones who are pretty sure they don't want to be on the distribution grid, they don't want to be distributed through the multiplexes, are, I think, the ones who are bold enough to explore political subjects or maybe sexually explicit themes. I think the challenge is for filmmakers who want to do so and still want their films to be distributed. That challenge remains. These guys are the ones who are finding it the toughest. The other thing I've noticed is there's a certain kind of global Netflix streaming film which is supposed to appeal equally to a viewer in Bombay as well as a viewer in Bogota. And so some of this local cinema that you were talking about earlier, Venkateshwaran, is almost like something quirky and local dressed up for a global audience. I think that is, I certainly see that happening, and I don't know where that trend will go. This glocal, what they call glocal cinema, that I see some of that happening on the streaming platforms for sure. These are just my observations.
I would just say that I think there are serious challenges. I think if we would like to get rid of the cinematographer, the Censorship Act, but the way this government is going at the center and also our little petty despots in the different states, I think there is going to be, through different means and through different back doors and side doors, more censorship, more attempt to control cinema, even than in the 70s and 80s. I mean, we are finding ourselves missing the old regimes of the CPM and the Congress in today's world, and people are scared to speak out. I think it will be a long struggle to get rid of that act, actually. And it does need to go, and we have to find different ways of destabilizing it and chucking it out. But sedition and anti-national and all this will be started to be leveraged against people trying to make independent cinema for sure. So we should be prepared for that. I agree with Nandini that this glocal and the whole almost like GM food, this is GM cinema, like completely injected with I was watching one serial, I won't name it, which is a big budget Netflix serial here, and then I watched another Netflix serial set in Mexico, and I suddenly realized that they were just components picked from the Mexican prototype and put into something which was supposed to be a novel by an Indian writer, which was a great thriller. And I was shocked because I thought, okay, this is interesting, this is new. But then when I saw the original, I just saw it was a copy. So all these traps, seductions, and all that are there, and we are going to have to navigate and negotiate with great inventiveness. And as Gautam Das said, we'll have to be inventive with our cinema, but we'll also have to be inventive with our distribution, with our, sometimes for serious cinema, we may have to lose our lust or our desire for a mainstream audience or a certain kind of money or a certain kind of recognition in certain kind of film festivals. I mean, it's a manthan, it's a churning that's going on. Not sure what will come out, but we have to be as optimistic as possible without being blind to the dangers that we face.
Thank you. Jain, you would like to add a few?
Of course, I agree with that. We have to be hopeful, but actually, we need to find some way to monetize these people who is in Tamil cinema. There is a way to bring independent cinema, even it's quirky, even is politically explicit. There is a venue. There is a way to distribute. And somehow they can monetize a little bit, not like a big star, studded show, business blockbuster or something. So in Kerala, we don't have that kind of venues yet, even though we have a huge history, a long history of cinephiles and film societies And our film societies are actually surprisingly large number, one of the largest numbers of film societies we have in our small state. We have to have some kind of practical linking of systematically showing these works without any government intervention in local film societies. In some way, we can at least monetize it. In digital distribution, it's very hard to get for cutting-edge cinema, is anything pushing envelopes to get the money back to the filmmakers. Of course, it's kind of very democratized by the digital revolution, that we can have a 4K material generated by a single phone right now. Yeah, that is kind of very hopeful about that. At the same time, we have to have some kind of effort from the film activist community to facilitate all these things, to find venues, distribution venues.
Thank you, Jen. I think we'll take some questions. Yeah, please. Mike.
So my name is Suresh Kumar. I'm from online media and I'm a film student. My question is to all the panelists. For independent filmmakers, how could they focus more on marketing and distribution and to make their movie a better success?
Of course, it's a product, it's a cultural product. We have to find markets. That means we have to reach audience. That I think.
So I've been in 2 or 3 of the panel discussions wherein Netflix or Amazon Prime, these are not very healthy for independent filmmakers. Because and I think you once explained, they didn't even look at the movie for a French movie maker and it happened. So the quality of movies would deteriorate by independent movie makers. Is there any solutions they could work on to improve, or are made by independent filmmakers will not be absorbed by Amazon and Prime and all these? This is a complaint which was given by one of the panelists at Goa.
That nothing to do with the quality. Quality, you mean the aesthetic quality of the work?
But still any movie made.
Starting from you, I am asking. Sir, you mentioned about the digital turn and the domestication of cinema by a customized content cinema. Is this a very paradigm shifting trajectory? That is one question to you. Then to Gautam Ghosh, sir. Sir, you said cinema, somebody said, with the disappearance of silent movie, cinema is dead. Because of the commodification and the box office hit came only because of talkies. I understand is that the 1930s economic depression was tied over by talkie films. So commodification starts from talkies. That is the question. To Nandini, you spoke about what? Netflix streaming. It is a fake democratization. Could you think I think they are having a Scoville scale of pungency or spiciness. They could have a tracking, a commodified cinema, they are already tracking it by analyzing the hits. So there could be a Scoville scale of spiciness or pungency. What is your take? Sir, what would your take on GM cinema? Genetically modified type of cinema.
No,
Yeah, if I've understood your question right, the only point I was trying to make, which I think Ruchir is also trying to make when he talked about GM, is that global streaming platforms, channels, festivals even, want a certain kind of globally consumable film, which can be understood by audiences throughout the world. But it also has to have some local flavor in order to show that it represents that country. So sometimes that local flavor, the spiciness, the quirkiness is played up. You're not sure whether that's for the benefit of the local audience or that is because people sitting in some other part of the world should say, oh, these families, they're just like mine, you know. So I think that's what we were trying to say, that while streaming platforms do give opportunities, many independent filmmakers have recovered some of their money. They've got new audiences and platforms because of Amazon, Netflix, Hotstar. Now Mubi has come to India, so that's another forum for them. But the fact is that it's not, there's no guaranteed pipeline of anything. And I think it's a new kind of challenge for the filmmaker.
Well, you did ask me about the transition from silent cinema to sound. Because, always we think that we are creating, we are making our films. But we forget that scientists and technologists, they are doing their R&D every day. So when sound was introduced and cinema became again gone back to the theater, but the creators, great creators, they could bring back the new language of sound cinema. It always happened. So now, in my opinion, with this small little apparatus and gadgets, a new cinema will evolve, or rather evolving. Which, for us may be difficult to digest, but it will be there. There will be something unthinkable, It happened always, with the change of technology. You see what has happened, when from analog we went to digital sound, and then we went to 5.1 track. So while writing the script, you could write the soundtrack keeping 5.1 or 7.1 track in mind. So, always it evolves, things evolves. So I think it will, but only thing is, cinema is not alone now. Once it was alone. Cinema, you plan for a movie with your friends, families, and you target and go to the cinema. Now, cinema or motion picture recording is everywhere. So we have to wait and see what's happening and how we do the marketing of those new creative products.
So I think the question about this digital turn has already been answered. There's a huge paradigm shift in the sense that the way film is imagined, as he's saying, like you're imagining at the stage of imagination of cinema itself, you're thinking about 5.1. Whether it be making a film, post-production, all aspects of cinema, its exhibition, distribution, everything has changed. Second thing is the way you experience cinema has changed. It has become reproducible. It has become instantaneously transferable, which is unthinkable some 20 years back. So there is a huge kind of shift in experience in cinema, making cinema, and also the whole idea about cinema, moving image.
Let me add how fast the perception changed. This year in Calcutta Film Festival, I had taken an initiative of showing some films again on celluloid. The entire Bartolucci's 9 films were shown on celluloid. Just imagine 7-8 years back, all the festival films were celluloid. But in 7-8 years, the one generation has completely forgotten the feel of celluloid. They were so excited to see Bartolucci on celluloid. I remember Deborah Young, the famous critic of Hollywood Reporter, once the first Martin Scorsese film, when it was released digitally in United States. So, perception changes. So it's so interesting,
Sir, one question to Joy Cherian, sir. Sir, you said about voyeuristic content in cinema. Why not? മെയിനായിട്ട് വോയറിസ്റ്റിക് സിനിമ.
No, I was probably you misunderstood me. No, I was say cinema itself intrinsically voyeuristic medium, and we are looking at other people's life, and of course all kind of writings and narratives are like that. But cinema has something kind of special, which is visually you are ogling at the lives of the people and the people going with the journey of the characters. And that sense I say, nothing wrong with being voyeuristic. We are all.
Can I? Okay. Yeah, sure. So basically, I'm not so much expert like you, and I just attended this forum just to understand more about cinema. So I was finding it difficult to even to conclude, like, are you with the favor of all this evolution that has happened in cinema, or like it was like both things were happening simultaneously. If one person is saying, like, any research what people put in, it's because like some grievances might have gone. Like, I'm sure like some housewife would have said, if there was an option, like rather than going to a cinema, I could have seen this, like taken a pause. So that's why I think like a Netflix might have come in. But over the period of time, I have been following certain few people. It's a personal choice, like people change with time. Like when I start making a film, my whole intent is just to complete a film. Then I attend some forum, then my interest is, no, I have to distribute it. Then I make my own set of people, then I have... So like there are so many interesting filmmakers. When they start, they are like so much into independent, and then they start politicizing, like they come into the news, they start saying something regarding this festival is not doing this. Like initially that might be my whole point also, to reach there. But somewhere along the way, like we are just losing track like of everything individually, and we get the support of many people in my cause. Like, so I was not able to conclude, like, are you in the favor with the whole change that has come in cinema? Like in the concluding part, sir also said like about the flicker thing, like the cinema from celluloid to digital, because the whole world is accepting. That's what I felt. So I'm into completely new in this zone. So just like you can say, like I'm curious to know what is the concluding like from this.
Well, you know, we can't conclude like this whether we are in favor of this change or not. It's impossible. You cannot stop the technology change. You can't. It reminds me of a very interesting book by Umberto Eco, Turning Back the Clock, name of the book.
Excuse me, one question, sir.
No. Let me answer.
I'm asking you only. So to conclude the lot of...
I'm not concluding.
Yeah, okay. They are asking me to conclude. Okay, you continue.
Because, you know, in that book, Umberto Eco has written Turn Back the Clock. Just remember what was there few decades back or in the last century. So it's like that. Fantastic film of Murnau was there. Will never come back, that technology. So we can't say, we can't conclude that, you know, we are against it. We have to accept it with lot of memories. So after all, cinema is collective memories of people.
Yes. So you are well said, sir, Gautam Ghosh, sir. So in fact, you know, the new generation is having the entirely different perception. We can't just digest their perception. So I respecting all your views, because they are in a absolutely different perception about cinema, with this changing technologies as well as the changing scenario. Entirely the new generations, they are not like us. So we are 50 plus, maybe less. But the new generation are approaching cinema in a very different canvas. So just we can't imagine how they are their perception. So my friend asked, no rules to follow in cinema. Everything for the time immemorial, it will change like anything. So we have to accept it, no doubt. Thank you, sir.
No, just to conclude in the sense like changes are inevitable, things are changing, like people are looking at it differently. But there is one, I will just end the discussion with one way in which John Berger talks about change. He says that he left Paris and these metropolitan cities, went to a remote village and stayed last 20 years of his life here there. So somebody was talking to him in the last days of his life. So he was actually talking a lot about this rural landscape, lifestyle, the pace, the kind of change of seasons. So the question the person was interviewing him asked him, like, are you being nostalgic, John Berger, about these old times, about feudal times, about agrarian thing? He said, no, I'm not. Changes happen because I'm contemporary. But a certain kind of grace has become past. That pains me. Maybe the certain kind of, the shift from the grains to pixels, you miss a certain kind of grace, certain kind of aesthetic. That's all, I think. Yeah, I think we have had a... Yeah. Thank you for Nandini, Gautam for inaugurating the session, Jayan Cherian, Chelavur Venu, who is one of the, he has been in the Film Society movement for the last 60 years. So he's one of the doyen veterans of our Film Society movement. And Rujit Joshi. Thank you very much, and also thank you for your patient hearing. Tomorrow's, please, Ahmad, you will announce tomorrow's program.
നാളെ ഓപ്പൺ ഫോറത്തിൽ സിനിമ സബ്ടൈറ്റിലിംഗ് ഇൻ റീജിയണൽ ലാംഗ്വേജസ് എന്ന വിഷയത്തിൽ സംവാദം ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും. Tomorrow on the open forum we'll have topic like cinema subtitling in regional languages. Participants would be Kamal, Premendra Majumdar, Premachandran P, Smita Panyan, Pramod from Amazon, and Nandalal. And session will be moderated by Mohammed. Thank you.